Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media Group, and today we have Minister Ishmael Mohammed from the Nation of Islam. Minister, tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what your position is in the nation.
First, my dear brother, thank you for having me on the show. Thank you for inviting me to be interviewed on my visit here to Kansas City. I'm honored to serve as the National Assistant Minister to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan of the Nation of Islam. And I'm also very deeply humbled, honored to be one of the sons of the most honorable Elijah Mohammed.
That's a mouthful, and it's Alhamdulillah.
Yes, sir.
Today, I'd like to cover a couple of subjects, but tell our audience why you're here in Kansas City.
I was invited by Mosque number 30 here in Kansas City under the leadership of Student Minister Carrie Mohammed on behalf of the believers here to come to Kansas City, a city that I frequented much in the 90s. And I have come in and out of the city the last few years, but unfortunately to officiate the funeral services of some of the members of our mosque. And so on each visit, I let Brother Carey know, I would love to come back to Kansas City. I love the city, I love the people here. And so I think on my last visit was earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken, and we saw each other. I had an engagement in St. Louis, and we reminded each other, still want to bring you to Kansas City. So I said, well, the year's not out yet. So we made it happen. And so I'm very happy to be back in Kansas City, this time to speak to the public.
So, stop the killing. What is that? What is that about? How do you plan to approach that with your audience here in Kansas City?
Thank you. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, those of us who are familiar with his work over these past nearly 5 decades, he embarked upon a Stop the Killing tour in the early 90s, and those tours led to the Million Man March in 1995. So our message remains the same. We cannot stop the killing until we destroy the ignorance and the self-hatred out of which we have the heart that is the heart really after our enemies, because they were the killers and the murderers. Now we have become the killers and the murderers and the robbers in our own community against the members of our own family and community. At the root of it, if we use scripture as a guiding principle, Jesus said, whoever hates his brother is a murderer. So there's so much self-hatred in us for each other because we have been devalued by the system. We have been devalued by the society. So if I don't see the value in my brother, if I have not been taught self-respect, and self-respect comes from self-knowledge, then I'm going to be used in my ignorance as an agent for self-destruction and the destruction of our community. All of this, as you very well know, is by design. So our message is self-love. If we as a people practiced back in the 60s which you're well familiar with that era. But the message has always been among black people in our dealing with white people, and particularly the oppressor, that we are to turn the other cheek when the master or the enemy strikes us. And then we were introduced to the philosophy of gaining what we wish to accomplish and achieve for ourselves non-violently. Well, that philosophy is not wrong, but there's something wrong that we can practice that with others outside of our community, but we cannot practice that kind of love in our own community. We can easily forgive those that shoot us down in our churches, come into our homes, come into our apartments, and we can be found in the courts praying for the murderer, forgiving the murderer. But when it comes to us, send him and put him on death row, punish him severely to the full extent of the law. That shows you that we still love others as we should love ourselves. And because we do not love self, the violence, the murder, the killings continue. And what we are looking at now is how the killings that we used to in the 80s, in the 90s, with the drugs and gang warfare, but right now, arguments are breaking out, domestic violence, and as a result, the killings and the homicide rate in Kansas City, in Detroit, in Chicago, all over, is not because of gang conflict and gang violence, but it is happening over arguments. It's happening in the home. So it shows you, again, what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us. We must, as a people, have the knowledge of self. Without the knowledge of self, we will continue to have the killings that are raging in our community.
Let me say this, Minister. I feel that we're living in the Matrix, first of all.
One of my favorite movies.
Right. And,
or trilogy.
And second of all, I think you hit the nail on the head. If you don't really know your history, you don't know yourself, you don't know where you've been, you really don't know where you're going, because everything is cyclical. What comes around goes around. And when it comes to history, when you realize that no matter what color you are on this planet, you're African if you're human, because that's the cradle of civilization. And we have been brought up in a Eurocentric environment that's where I go to the Matrix. And all this low-hanging fruit, free this and free that, has got our community there in a malaise. And I talked to you off camera about cognitive dissonance. We do not want to look at what's happening to us. I think our education system has failed us. I think the black church has failed us. I think our whole community in general is in love with the materialistic things that have been put in front of them, and they value that more than they value their community. And the most precious thing you can have is communications. Because at one time, I talked to you about when, in the 60s, when our community, we all lived together. we all went to church together, or went to the mosque together, and went to school together. So whenever we were trying to make any type of advancement, we were all in. But through desegregation in my generation, we were the first ones to really be able to go to college. And I went to two black colleges, Virginia State and Central State University in Wilberforce, Ohio. But when you come out, now you have you have the internet developing, you have commercialism developing, and where we couldn't go in these places, now you can go into the restaurant, you can buy what you want to buy. And then I think we started having classism in our community, and that's my era, and they have forgotten about the bottom 2/3 of our community. And most of the issues that you spoke on are mental health issues also. I don't know how we even survive where we have to be one person when we're in the house. As soon as we come outside, we have to be something else. So, what would you have to say about our leadership across the nation, and what are the rules of engagement? Does anybody have a plan that we all can participate in? My company has been pushing block voting and group economics. And for either one of those tactics to succeed requires numbers. The only place you really can get numbers from in our community are the bottom 2/3 of our community. Those are the ones that are disengaged. And the only way to really reach them is digital, what we're doing right now, because everyone has a phone and they can, but I don't see the leadership in our community, especially here in Kansas City. We're the largest black-owned digital media company on the planet. We don't do no business with the NAACP, with Freedom Inc., with the Urban, everyone that represents the black community. That seems strange. And that's why I'm so happy, I jump for joy when the nation comes to Kansas City. Because a lot of times, people know Mr. Nelson. You don't see Mr. Nelson out at none of these functions. You see me on camera, because I'm not going to be around my people smiling in my face and not delivering. And our politicians act like everything is a photo op. And I'd like to hear what you have to say about leadership in general.
Well, you've said a lot. Let's start with where we are, and as you said, knowing our history. But that is the problem. We not only don't know our own history, meaning our origin in the world as a people, but we really have been robbed of the history of our struggle as a people, as well as our enslavement, which in public education, slavery is being rewritten. There's a new narrative now that many of us chose to come over here. Many of us were immigrated to this country. And a few years ago, to my surprise, and I share this often when this topic comes up because I was blown away. I spoke to about 500 boys at a high school in Gary, Indiana. And after my message, I opened the floor for questions. And a young man that was maybe seated in the 3rd or 4th row, he asked me, He said, Minister, where did we come from? I thought he was joking, Mr. Nuss. I'm telling you, my brother, I thought he was joking. And, you know, generally when you had 500 boys, and, you know, I thought everybody else was going to bust out laughing. So I said, excuse me? I asked him to repeat it. He said, yeah. Where did we come from? And the brothers that were looking at him, that were seated next to him, they looked at him, and all their heads turned back at me. And all of those young men were looking for the answer. It blew my mind. So I said, you mean where did we come from? Like, how did we get here to America? Yeah. But he was looking for it. Of course, they had some idea we're black. And I asked him, well, you mean like from Africa? And yeah, but they wanted to know how we got here. See? And when I began to share with them the history of our enslavement, it was as though they were hearing it for the first time.
And you can tell by the expression on their face.
Absolutely. So there has been a concerted effort to write slavery out of the history books and give a new narrative. Now this is so damaging and destructive to our children, because if they don't know how we got here, what we have suffered, they're unable to understand the prevailing conditions in the black community today. Today is a result of yesterday. And if I don't know the past, I cannot understand the present, and I cannot look to any future without understanding something of the past. So when we look back, we are in 2024. We are now 405 years being in this country if you go back to 1619. But the Honorable Elijah Mohammed taught us that the first of our people came over here in the year 1555. So we are 469 years from 1555, 405 years from 1619. We are 161 years from the Emancipation Proclamation, right? And then after those years, which is a critical period, because after blacks were announced that they were free, and the efforts of the federal government, when they went down with General Sherman and asked blacks what did they want, a representative group of black leaders, about 20 black pastors, met with General Sherman and military leaders, and look at what they asked for. They said, we do not any longer want to live among white people. We want to live among ourselves, and they didn't ask for money. They asked for land.
That's a no-no.
They asked for land because the true wealth is in the land. Now, we're getting to something here, and we're talking about reparations and all of this. So that's where the offer, I think it's field order number 15, to give to blacks 40 acres. The mule wasn't in there, I don't know how it came. But in any case, do you know that they gave us land from Charleston, South Carolina, all the way down, I forget the name of the river in Florida, a stretch of 350 miles. So much land, but of course, every time that they have given us something, they've taken it back. And whoever gives you something has the power to take it back. Whoever makes you has the power to break you. But then we come out of that period. That's the whole period now of the Reconstruction period. That and the land, of course, was taken back within a year. And there we were left to do what? Sharecropping again. But here's what I'd like us to look at. When we were first told that we were free, we wanted land.
Well, I understand that.
Today, we don't ask for land in reparations. We want a check. And this is a part of this period that you are speaking to, where you have a generation that is seeking money, wants money. Now I'm going to fast forward to the 60s because that's another critical period. In the 60s, we had more unity, we had black consciousness, we had black power, we had the organizations of SCLC, you had the, of course, the Urban League was there, and the NAACP, but you had the Black Snake, you had the Black Panthers, you had the Nation of Islam, and you had the artists, the celebrities, the athletes. Everyone appeared to be coming together, and it was black power, black love, and we had some of the most powerful leaders in the 60s. But again, I want to go to our beautiful brother and teacher, Elijah Muhammad. He taught us who the enemy is.
That's the problem now.
And our problem is we do not know the enemy. And one of the things that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad points out in his monumental book, Message to the Black Man,
I got that message,
that
baby.
when the government was appropriating funds for Howard University, they decided that there were 3 things that they would not teach black people. You ready for this?
I know.
You know them. The science of what?
Oh.
Business. The science of mating. And the science of warfare. Now, look at our problem today. Economics, relationships, and we continue to trust someone that has been our enemy from the very beginning. The 60s, we lost Medgar Evers. We lost Fred Hampton. We lost Malcolm X. We lost Martin Luther King Jr. We lost all of these great magnetic personalities and leaders. And the government, through the FBI and the COINTELPRO, they infiltrated the black organizations, right?
Without it,
and they destroyed
you giving a lesson.
our organizations. But I want us to see where we are in 2024 and what has happened. Because once those organizations and those leaders were destroyed, and the last of them was Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam in 1975. Once all of that was gone, then there was no light and there was no consciousness among our people, and a new generation is born. Now it's born now in a period that all of those black organizations that we just spoke to are gone. Louis Farrakhan rises. He begins the rebuilding of the Nation of Islam. And in the late 70s, when he stood up in the early 80s, he's speaking all around the country. And there, see, life is starting to come back in the black community in the 80s. But the enemy has been working against us from the very beginning. This is what I want us to see that will watch this interview, that are listening You got to understand who the enemy is. And in this period, it's all been about politics and economics. You never hear education. You hear about black folks' advancement through politics and economics. Wrong. You can't even take advantage of the political system if you're not an enlightened person that knows your own self-interest. A fool and his money will soon part. So you got all of these millionaires, and we even got a couple of billionaires now. What has it meant? As you said, you have the classes, but the masses have lagged further and further behind because the system was never designed to accommodate the poor. It was always set up for the classes, and the masses are to serve the classes, and the masses are maintained in that position through ignorance.
Can I interrupt you just for a
You're
second?
getting me excited up here.
Minister, let me say this to the public. Most of our community don't know who our black universities are named after. The Morehouses, the Spelmans, and all of your black medical colleges. They're named after J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller's wives. Most of us don't know how the public education system came about. We were coming from an agrarian society to industrialization. Who started the public school system? J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller, because they knew that they needed workers for the Industrial Revolution, and they needed obedient workers. They needed workers that would not question and would sit, and that's what education does. Education really dumbs you down. It keeps you from being creative. It teaches you to obey. And that's why the lesson you were giving about leadership with the Honorable Elijah Mohammed, and I told you I was in high school at that time in the 60s, and I was proud as hell because I came up reading Run, Dick and Jane, Tarzan being king of the jungle, and all of that. But when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad brought the Nation of Islam to, as far as I was concerned, it was the golden age, and the things that you talked about, economics, as I told you off camera, there wasn't, and I traveled, there wasn't a black community in any major city that didn't have a ton of fish houses and different things that we owned. And I watched this government take the Nation of Islam down, and I've watched the job that Honorable Minister Farrakhan has done over the last 5 decades in trying to rebuild our community. And I remember him going overseas, seeing Gaddafi and different ones trying to bring us together, not just here in this country. And one of the things that I really admired, that he did not kowtow to what's going on. Most of the people in my position don't even want to be associated with the people that are representing us in this war. And most of our middle class, they are cowards. They will not tell their kids who the real enemy is. And that is the problem.
I can't come behind that with anything. You said it. And it's sad. It hurts. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has taught us from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, no man can want for his people more than the people want for themselves. but all of those that were sold to the system. Now you see the system failing. Our people are suffering, many that invested so much in this recent election. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us that the black man can cast his vote or not cast his vote. In the end, the white citizens are going to rule anyway. He said if you vote for the Democratic Party, you know what to expect. If the Republican Party takes over, you know. In other words, and look at these words. He said the die is always set against black people. So voting, all of these things that we have done, we have tried what? The system. But the system
It's not made for us.
But guess what? Now the system is imploding. Now the system is collapsing. Now
I smile on that.
is failing, and guess what? All of those that invested in the system, the banking system, the political system, the economic system, all of it, it's unraveling. It's unraveling right before our very eyes. Now, where are you gonna turn? Where are you gonna turn? I represent the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And if you could find one thing in Elijah Muhammad's program that is not a solution to our problem and a way out, he gave it all to us. So this system is dying. White supremacy is dying. Western civilization is dying. It's on a decline. That's the time that we have entered right now. So all of this is about to be done away with, and a brand new civilization is coming up. A new system will replace the old system. Anyone that knows history knows the rise and fall of civilizations. America was doomed from its very beginning. The criminalization and everything that they have done, they have committed crimes against humanity. There's no way. If Rome didn't survive, if ancient Babylon did not survive, if ancient Egypt didn't survive, what makes us to think that America has a promising future? That's where we are as we speak, my dear brother. We are living in the fall of America, the end of Western civilization, and all of those that want to continue to invest in this, you're going to be very, very disappointed, because this is not going to survive very long.
Can I ask you, do you have an opinion on what's happening over in Palestine? Because
An opinion?
I can't even believe. I'm saying
Every human
doomsday.
being, every human being that looks at those atrocities that are taking place, it pains us to see the suffering of women and children and what Israel is doing. So my opinion is the opinion of the vast majority of the people of our planet. that look at that and we hurt and we are in great pain to see the suffering, and we want justice for the Palestinian people. But they're not going to last long, and this suffering is going to end very, very soon. That's as much as I will say at this moment.
I'm like dismayed, and again I go back to the flip, to the Matrix. And if you've looked at the Matrix, you understand me. 99% of the people that I deal with, or when I deal with them, I know that they're in the Matrix. So I know I only can. Yeah,
but you're trying to unplug them. But like the guy said when he was eating his steak,
you're right.
I know this is not real.
But he'd rather have that, and that's what you have. Minister, you're one of the few people, so obviously that movie touched you also.
Oh,
because when you look, a hungry man has his allegiance to who feeds him.
Absolutely.
All right. And so, you come out of high school, the first thing you want to do is get you a car, or you go to college, then you want to get a car. You got to buy it from them, you got to finance it through them. So you're really entering into the Matrix then. Then you get the car, the next thing you want to do, you want to get some clothes, because you got to buy them from them. More into the Matrix. You did all of that so you can get the honey. It can't be no honey without money. And so you get the little woman, you invest more into the Matrix, because you're buying from them, now you want to get a house. You got to get it from them. And now they got all the advertisement and everything, and you're buying the Nikes, and you're buying all of this stuff, and you're indebted to him. Now when your boss says something that you don't like, you just swallow it, because you got to keep that job.
Well, the truth that trilogy conveys to its audiences is when Morpheus was talking to Neo and told him, no one can tell you what the Matrix really is. You have to see it for yourself. And the first truth that Neo had to come to terms with is when Morpheus said, you are a slave.
Right.
See, the blinders have been put over your eyes. And that's for most. But most people are awake. They just don't know which way to go. See, the alternative reality is not clear, because we all have to eat. We all have to live. We all have to survive. So in one sense, we are dependent upon the system for our survival. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you believe in the system. You draw from the system like all of us drew from our mother's system to evolve ourselves in her womb. All along, an independent system is being developed. And when we reach the point and stage of our growth and development in the womb of our mothers, nothing could hold us back. It was time, because we outgrew the limited confines of that space. Then we were delivered. But we were delivered already with an independent system that we drew and grew from the system of our mothers. We are a people just like that. We now are starting to do this. We're starting to kick, because we are and have, for the most part, outgrown what America can give to black people. So right now, the government is preparing for uprisings. They're preparing for masses of people who now have outgrown the system of education. We talk about all of the other things, inflation, the economy, yeah, but people are fed up and they're tired with what the system, the matrix, is giving them. Now the question is, are you ready to go on the Nebuchadnezzar?
I like that, man.
Are you ready to jump on Noah's Ark? Are you ready to get out? Because this thing is about to explode. That's who Elijah Muhammad represents, dear brother. That's what Louis Farrakhan represents. They represent two servants from God. And what has been Elijah Muhammad's message to us? What is Louis Farrakhan's message to black people? It's the message of God. Come out, come out, come out of her, my people. Babylon the Great, this is the book of Revelation, has fallen, has fallen. Come out of her and be not partakers of her sins and her plagues. The call of God to black people is come out. And was it not Dr. King who in the 60s, see, during that period of desegregation and the effort for integration, Dr. King said, I fear that I'm leading my people into a burning house. What did Dr. King see that we failed to see and accept? And what Elijah Muhammad was telling us, you got to come out of this house. We will never get justice as long as we are under and depend and look to this construct and system of things. We have to find unity amongst ourselves. That was the answer in the 60s, and that's the answer right now. Unity of our people. And a new, see, we keep looking to the leadership that the Matrix has made. The real leadership is in the streets. The real leadership is not who's elected necessarily. It's not what's in front of us. That was made by the system to keep herding and directing black people, see, into the American dream that has always been a nightmare for the masses of our people. But the real leadership is out there. And that's why Paul said, hope is not in what you see. It's what it is in what you don't see. So we keep looking to the government. We keep looking to the system of politics, the system of things for hope. And no hope coming from that. So the leadership that we have in front of us, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, if they are part of the matrix, that's a leadership that's been bought and sold. And every brother and sister that we vote into office, they start off good. And they're there to represent their constituents. And some of them, some of these young brothers and sisters, they have good hearts, but they get corrupted. They get bought once they get in there, and they never can maintain the strong voice or fulfill what their heart's desire was in the beginning that they started their political careers, because the whole thing is corrupt. So where does that leave us? We have to turn our attention away from the matrix, and we have to get unplugged.
Only way you
But are those that manage and control the matrix, they're not going to unplug you. It's going to take the Carlos. It's going to take those of us that are already unplugged. But we can go in and out of the system. But we're unplugged. Our job, my dear brother, is to continue on this wonderful platform that God has blessed you.
Let me say that God has blessed me. This is real, minister.
Well, I'm acknowledging it.
Yeah, this is real. When I tell people that my company is an anomaly, that I didn't find my purpose until 20 years ago. And this is my purpose. I think the Creator said, this is what I got you here to do, and you cannot be a coward. You have got to use this to illuminate issues that your people can plug into. Because the matrix is like a computer. You're not going to get unplugged unless we put a different program in. And you're not going to get that program if you're not going to a network that the whole network is about unplugging you. Because the more knowledge you get, the more you see things clearer.
That's right.
And at this point in time, all you have to do is get on the internet and you can find out anything that you want to find out. I'm constantly looking for the beginning of humanity. I listen 30 hours. Where do black people come from? You talked about that. What's the skin color? How can you tell where they come from? Imperial scientific data. And when you really go back to pre-Pharaonic times, and you see how humanity came, and you see the part that you played, and creation, and you see that everything that you have been taught is basically a lie, and everything that you think that you know, you really don't know, because it has a Eurocentric, not just tilt, it is fully in a Eurocentric mindset. And so you come in the world already at a disadvantage, because if you want to learn, you are learning what they're teaching you.
And who was the first teacher among us to tell us that all that you have been taught is false?
The minister, there's no doubt. Hold it, this is what I want to say
Who
about
was the first to tell us that before the present civilization and before their narrative of the first man coming after the Ice Age and all of that, that there was an advanced civilization, and we are the original people of our planet. There's a new series I've been watching on Netflix. I think it's Netflix. It's called Ancient Apocalypse.
I'm watching that too.
Isn't that great? And I see all of these historians, these scholars, these archaeologists, and they're all confirming what a man that God raised from among us, brother, and Elijah Mohammed. He taught us the origin of the Caucasian people. I didn't believe that at first. Of course not. Because you were programmed.
All right. Get me together.
But it's okay. You got unplugged. But Elijah Muhammad taught the truth. And all of the scholars, see, the scientists and scholars of this world didn't look at Elijah Muhammad as a fool. We were the ones that were looking at him and saying, oh, these are just stories. But they took everything that man taught to life on other planets. and a high civilization on Mars. Who taught us that? Elijah Muhammad. What about these wheel-like objects in the sky that now the United States government is acknowledging the existence of, and how they now, because of so much public demand, have to share, and what they're sharing is still very little, but at least the Pentagon released the report, and for the first time they used the language that Elijah Muhammad taught us. They said there's a mother ship and smaller probes going in and out of it, but Elijah Muhammad taught us on the mother plane and a city in the sky and 1,500 smaller planes. Elijah Muhammad only went to the 4th grade, but he was taught by a very wise man. Elijah Muhammad taught all of us. I suggest, go to Message to the Black Man. Get the origin of civilization, the origin of the black man, the origin of God, and the origin of the Caucasian people. He taught it all and then some.
Well, now they have imperial
Thank
scientific
God.
data showing you. When they were saying the white man
But
was
they're
different,
bearing witness.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
To what Elijah Muhammad taught. Even the measurements that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us of the planet and the distance of the other planets from the sun. Do you know that back in the 30s when he taught that the diameter of the earth was 7,926 miles with a circumference of 24,896 miles, all of those measurements that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught, they didn't have those measures. They had roundabout figures. But now they have the advancement of technology, and they now have given the exact figures that Elijah Muhammad taught us, that every student or member of the Nation of Islam receives. How did he know it in the 30s that the science and the technology of this world did not have then? It only proves that the man that he said taught him, Master Farrakhan, the master teacher who gave him all of that. Our problem is we respect others outside of us. When God gave us knowledge, wisdom, understanding from a brother.
The Dogons, serious.
I'm talking about our brother, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And when that man in that series, Ancient Apocalypse, he's proving, he says, see, this proves by the formation of the rock that a highly advanced civilization existed before the Ice Age. So they're coming up now. They're coming up now. But thank God you're unplugged.
Yeah, well,
I thank you
that's
so much.
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
For allowing me the time to come on your show and anytime. Because we can do this while I'm in Chicago.
That's what I'm talking about.
And we can do a series
of
different topics.
That's what I'm talking about.
Let's do it.
Because I interrupt you to say about the Dogons. Science didn't know nothing about the star Sirius. And they were saying that these people, this tribe was this and that. And just last quarter of a century, telescopes, oh, Sirius. And I was saying that's the same thing, how the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was trying to give us a message about things
and
we
it's
did
in the
not.
Holy Quran.
That we did not know about. But again, when you plug up, you are missing what we need to have, and that is information, truthfulness, so that we can think better, somewhat like your diet. When you're on the correct diet, you feel better. You look better, your skin and everything is better.
That's why we were talking earlier. A people's freedom is secured through knowledge. And what we have failed to see is how important education is. Before politics and before economics, it's education. And if you look, nobody is out here advocating for a new educational paradigm or curriculum for black children. And you wonder why they're failing? You wonder why they have attention deficit disorder? They don't have attention deficit disorder. They can be at the PS5 and play Call of Duty all day. No problem. But there's something wrong with that they're feeding black children. And if the black boy and the black girl don't see themselves in the picture, how are they going to see their value when they're constantly learning about the value, the achievements, the successes, the victories, the conquest of others? And the only thing they read of themselves, which they don't even relate to their brothers and sisters of ancient Egypt, because they look at those images and that doesn't look like them. They don't teach them about the Dogon. They're not teaching them about African civilization. So where do they relate? And even if they give us a little history of Africa, the white man came and he took us from our savage state. See, the Tarzan is still, it's still being projected. And whether you had a great civilization or not, it fell. It's not here anymore. We are the conquerors. We are the rulers. And that's what black children end up being indoctrinated. And that's how the idea of white supremacy is put into the bloodstream and mind of our people. It's through education. I hope, my dear brother, that we will start encouraging our community away from politics and focus our attention where our focus should be. It should be on education. And we have brilliant educators among us. Why can't we come together and develop an educational curriculum that builds healthy self-esteem in our children, a healthy self-concept? I'm telling you, we wouldn't have the killings in Kansas City, we wouldn't have the killings in Chicago, we wouldn't have brother killing brother if they had a proper value of themselves. So if we're not looking at education, and then the argument can say, well, it's the educational system, and of course they tell us what they're gonna get. See, that's a slave. No. This is what we know is good for our children, and if it's good for our children, it's good for all children. And then maybe the motto in the American seal, e pluribus unum. See, you can't make out of many one until you have a universal educational system that teaches every human being how they got here, what your relationship is to this human being, that human being. Allah says in the Quran, I created you into tribes and into families that you may know one another, not hate one another. So what is our contribution as a people to civilization as a whole? And what are the years? Because they just came out of Europe just a few days ago. We've been here building civilization, connecting with the cosmos, connecting with the stars for not thousands of years, billions, not just billions, trillions of years. Elijah Muhammad taught our technology goes all the way back to 66 trillion years ago. The moon that orbits the earth. How did it get here? We're going to let white folks tell us? Why, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us that the moon was deported, separated from this planet through high explosives 66 trillion years ago? And of course, when the astronauts landed on the moon and brought samples back, guess what they discovered? Gunpowder. And the astronaut is even recorded the smell. Now this is Elijah Muhammad that taught this. About the moon and the human being that
fourth grade education people
that caused that explosion not a billion years ago, 66 trillion years. You gotta understand the Johnny come lately on it, he's trying to find and discover. And that's why everywhere he goes, oh, the lost continent of Atlantis. Ooh, because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said when the new man was coming on the planet, we, the original people, we buried our secrets, our knowledge, and our history. Where did we bury it? In the jungles, in the oceans, in the deserts, because the new man was to not pattern his rule off of the wisdom of the original man of yesterday. This is where our people have to go. And I'm telling you, when we put our focus on education and developing an educational curriculum that suits and meets the requirements of a black boy and girl, this thing changes overnight. But as long as we keep on go out to vote in politics, now how many times have we tried that? Where's that gotten us? Nowhere. And money? Really? More money? What is that? How much comes into the black community right now?
Not a whole lot, but I do know.
1.4. It's heading north to $1.5 trillion, but the money doesn't circulate 6 hours in our community before it goes out into the
We'd be the seventh richest nation if we put the money together.
So what does that say? Unity.
Yeah. Well, I said block voting and group economics, that requires numbers. But what I would like to say about this education, I started my company at the Du Bois Learning Center. And I want to say Dr. Leon Dixon, but it's not a doctor, but Leon Dixon is co-founder, and he really imparted on me because he was an intellectual and had me reading a lot of black intellectuals, and he was saying that we had to teach our own kids. We couldn't depend on. So I'm going to give you this. In the 80s, I used to have the second largest black general contracting company in Kansas City. And I did a lot of high rises. I did a lot. But 20 years later, one of the kids, I used to adopt kids and do a lot of things with them. And I would let them clean up after, in the summertime, we'd be doing apartment building or something, and they would do clean up so that when the crews came in, they would have fresh place to work. And we're at a tournament, and Miguel says, Mr. Nelson, you know, before I worked for you, I never seen a black man pay a white man. And that's where, like you said something that floored you, that floored me. This was like 20 years ago, 10 years ago he said that. And I knew him since he was in high school. And I would have never thought of nothing like that. He's a high school kid and he's never seen a black man pay a white man. And so that shows you how that really affects our kids, what they're exposed to. The last but not least, both the Honorable Minister Farrakhan and Honorable Minister Elijah Mohammed, the things that I got out of the nation was more so self-reliance. You've got to own your own, you've got to build your own. It doesn't make a difference who's in power. That's why they burnt down Oklahoma, and that's why they did all of that, because we could direct the course of our own destiny in these little enclaves. And we have got to, at this point, in my estimation, understand that the right or the left, they part of that same bird. And what we've got to do, we've got to come together as black people. And we don't have to come together on everything, but we have to come together on how we're spending our money, for sure. That is group economics and block voting. And block voting means that you're voting as a block, but you're giving who you're voting for some direction of why you're voting for them. And if they're not doing that, then they can be held accountable by that block, and then we'll get you out. And so we've got to start organizing more so. And in closing, what would you have to say to our audience?
Well, we've had a very, I would say, stimulating and enlightening conversation. I enjoyed every minute. The Honorable Elijah Mohammed said, our unity will solve 95% of our problems. We have to find a way to unite. And as you said, we don't have to agree on everything, but we have to at least agree on some very common issues and unite, and our unity will secure us a better community. But we have to come together. I thank you so much for the honor. May God continue to bless you. Keep up the wonderful work. Keep on Cascade Media like the Nebuchadnezzar, and keep unplugging them, Brother Carter.
I love it.
Keep unplugging.
I want to close with, I always steal one of my other hosts. He was co-founder of What's Up Kansas City, James Watts. He's over at the Black Archives now in Mid-America. He's an omnibudsman. But he always closes his show. It was a plum-pleasing pleasure having you on the show. But as I always close, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself.
That's right.
Hey, Minister,
Wonderful.
I thought that this is going to be broken up into 2 or 3 different parts, and it's going to be up on the internet in the next 3 hours.
Wow.
And
I like those look comfortable.
They are.
They are.
Mm-hmm. Now, I don't have any gatekeepers. This is a couple of our websites. That's my direct number.
I will absolutely.
And
hold it. So do you remember when you got interviewed? Mm-hmm. Or you were at the station?
Huh?
You had another station.
Oh no, we were at my office in the Lincoln Building. I had 7 offices on the 2nd floor, and I had one room that where you was, the green room. But I thought this was a very interesting conversation. And as I said, most people don't want to. What you was looking at different things.
I went to NASA. So NASA now says Earth's moon was born out of destruction.
Are you serious?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
This is NASA recently.
he always does. Then topic
Yeah, but that's education.
This is new on Nassau side.
Thank you.
How did the moving forward?
Well, I'd like to get some pictures of the brothers with you. Calvin, can you bring some of the brothers? I'd like for everybody to get a picture with the minister.
But you got it mentioned that it came from the earth, it was covered in water, they called it magma. That was a destruction.
Some large impact.
Absolutely.
All right, brothers.
Absolutely.
Get next to the brother because you all looking at that, but look up at the camera. We want to.
I thought you were gonna be in it.
No, I don't. Hold it. They see me on there. I met.
So what do you want us to
No, I want to let each brother get a picture with you to a degree.
do?
A group picture. Or they can just stand so that they can have.
Come on, KC.
Yeah,
Come on, Chief.
Wait, we can just get these two they hold it. All right.
There's only one bear here.
All right, you get in the middle, minister.
You say Kansas City, St. Louis, there's
Yeah, no, we want all the brothers. You know, St. Louis or those.
Come on, brother.
Aren't you brother?
We good.
Get in the picture.
Get lost.
That's all right. This is not. This
I'm
is.
gonna add on to these bros. You get it back.
No, I don't take care of this.
That's supposed to be in
All right, man, no.
Yeah.
My brothers.
Yeah! Oh, excuse me. Are you hitting it or not?
Yeah, I'm taking different types, bro. Then I'm panning. And now I want to take a little short movie, video. Like to welcome Minister Ishmael Mohammed to Kansas City, and these are some of the brothers that are welcoming him. Salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. All right. Thank you, my brother. Love you. I love you too. Great work, and we will stay in touch.
Listen, I want